we do have breaking news about our favorite Deebo Samuel. He has requested a trade. And according to ESPN's Nick Wagner, the 49ers can expect a day 3 pick in return if a team is interested in trading for Deebo Samuel. How lucky do you think the Niners are to hear this?
They need to get rid of that guy. They needed to get rid of that guy before last season started. He punched and choked the long snapper, and he was still on the team. How do you do that?
Yeah.
So no. And what's more, he is no longer a football player. He plays the part of a football player, but he isn't actually a football player.
No, he's a podcaster. He's a part-time hand-to-hand combat fighter. But in terms of football, I think maybe he has a future on special teams with his next team. I think he showed something as a kick returner, Dad. You got to give him that.
Iggy, he's a little chubby.
He is a little chubby.
I saw it.
What? Is he like kind of like Roberto Duran, where he like lets it go between fights, and then when it's time to compete, he's there?
Could be, but here's the thing. Roberto Duran, God love you, Roberto, was one of the all-time greatest fighters I ever saw.
Is that?
I mean, really. Mm-hmm. This guy here we're talking about isn't. But I got to say something about him. Mm-hmm. I was reading this morning that a health minister in England said that there's a person who identifies as a llama. Just as a llama. And that this lady, who's the health minister, said, if that person identifies as a llama, you should treat that person as a llama. And so somebody asked, if that person gets sick, do you send a doctor or a veterinarian? Well, Deebo identifies as a great football player. Now, I'm not saying he identifies as a llama. I'm just making an analogy. So if he identifies as a great football player, should other people encourage him in that belief that he is a great football player / llama? Absolutely not. That's where your self-image, and it's important for an athlete to have a self-image. I'm great. Even when they're no longer great, they have to believe it. That's where reality has to come in and say, no, Deebo, you're not a llama.
When I was a kid, that's a great one. There's a really famous South Park episode where Kyle Broflovsky, the Jewish kid, tries out for the basketball team and doesn't make it. So he has a procedure. He decides to identify as an African-American kid and has a procedure to become African-American. I don't think he makes the team, though. But then his dad identifies as a dolphin and has a procedure to become a dolphin. So I don't know what that had to do with Deebo Samuel, but it just reminded me of a really good South Park episode.
Well, yeah, it's just self-delusion. It's about self-delusion. Yeah. And
sometimes it'd be nice to be a dolphin. I feel like they have a good time, and I think they're smart. I think they talk to each other.
They click. They do that click.
They click. Exactly. So that seems like fun.
But the point is, Deebo isn't clicking anymore.
No, he wasn't clicking. No, he wasn't locked in.
That's what he told the kicker, right? To be locked in. Now Deebo needs to be locked out.
Do you think that Deebo Samuel and Jake Moody will reunite in another team next year
and love each other?
So they're past. They'll have maybe they'll start a podcast together. Deebo and Jake,
just like Jordan Poole and Draymond Green, they got over it too.
Do you think one day there's going to be Deebo Samuel Day at Levi's Stadium where he comes back to the game and there's like bobbleheads and everyone gives him a little celebration at halftime, or do you think he's kind of worn out his welcome by requesting a trade 2 times?
I wouldn't be surprised if they have a Deebo Samuel Day. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, good. I'll go.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
And look, he's a young man. I think it's possible he's actually a very nice man. And what I've noticed with athletes, they're all usually in their 20s or late 20s, early 30s. They're young. They're not fully developed. In all of my years, I covered sports. I would meet them after they retired, and even people I thought were jerks and people I didn't get along with, uniformly, they had grown up. They had done all the growing up that most of us did before, and I found them very pleasant to be around. And they were happy to see me and Ira Miller and Glenn Dickey because we had been part of it with them. And so I'm being serious now. I think Deebo, when they have a Deebo Day, and I'm all in favor of it because he was a very exciting player when he was good, I'm sure he's going to be terrific.
Before we move on from Deebo, what do you feel if he never plays another game for the 49ers, what is his legacy with this team?
Okay, it's a short-lived legacy, but he was, for a time, one of the most exciting players in the whole league, Iggy.
Mhm.
For maybe a season, 2
Mhm.
seasons, you got him the ball. It was so exciting. No one could
It might be
tackle
a
him.
touchdown, no matter where he was.
Yeah, and I loved watching him play. I did. So I would say his legacy is short-lived. He's not a Hall of Fame player by any means, but man, at his height, he was like Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
That's how exciting he was.
Yeah, if you talk about like top 5 most exciting players to watch in football, he was in it.
No question. It
Yeah.
was a pleasure to watch him work.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, part of his legacy is that he was a bit of a one-year wonder and that he
Yeah.
couldn't really keep it going. And a big reason he couldn't keep it going seems to be conditioning, which was
It
something he
seems
was
to
in control of.
Yes. In addition, I think the league caught up to what Kyle was doing with him,
Mhm.
and that's a little bit on Kyle. In addition, Nicky, he got hit hard a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. In
And
addition, you said his legacy was short-lived. It should have been shorter-lived. He stayed here 1 year too long.
absolutely, again, I come back to Bill Walsh. He always would tell me, "You gotta get rid of a player a year." We're gonna call it a year, not a season, a year sooner than a year later. And habitually, this group that now runs the 49ers and has never won a Super Bowl, habitually gets rid of players a year too late or 2 years too late.
I think the reason they were hesitant to sign Deebo Samuel in the first place 3 years ago is because they knew conditioning was an issue for him. And I think if Bill Walsh felt that way about a player, probably he might have traded Deebo Samuel right then instead of giving him a contract because at the time he was worth probably a top 10 pick in the draft.
Yeah, Bill was so insistent on conditioning, he insisted that his coaches look good.
Yeah.
He would sometimes talk to me about other coaches in the league who were fat. And that defensive coordinator, Rex Ryan's brother, whatever his name was, over at the Raiders, he used to
Rob.
get on Rob Ryan, and he was, uh, unkempt, fat, looked like he just crawled out of the hamper. And Bill would phone me and call him a fat MFer.
From what I heard, Deebo got drafted. The wide receiver coach at the time was Wes Welker, who was a serious pro football player. And Deebo had a really good rookie year, came back the next year, a little overweight, got hurt, didn't play so well. Wes Welker the next year told him, you need to like run before and after practice, and I'll do it with you. And so Deebo had the best year of his career in 2021 with Wes Welker as his coach, really pushing him to be in the best shape he could be. After that season, Wes Welker went with McDaniel to the Dolphins, and Deebo really hasn't been the same player he was that year.
If that story is true, it's interesting, Iggy, on so many levels. God love Wes Welker, but also God love Deebo for doing it with him.
Right.
And if the story is true, and this is the first I've heard of it, and you haven't interviewed anybody, it's something you heard.
Yeah.
So
I heard in the press room.
Yeah. So if it's true, Kyle should have had a minder, somebody with Deebo to run before and after practices. He should have understood what was going on if that was were the case, and he should have had somebody doing it with him. But both he and Deebo dropped the ball if it's a true story.
Well, I've interviewed Leonard Hankerson, who replaced Wes Welker. He seems like a really good guy. I don't know. He clearly doesn't have the gravitas of Wes Welker, who was with Brady on the Patriots. And I don't know if he's as confrontational as Wes Welker, as demanding as Wes Welker. I don't know. Wes Welker was pretty good.
It's a very interesting story. I love it.